The Pension Lifetime Allowance is now dead. It's just not a thing anymore. But within hours of the Chancellor announcing its abolition back in March 2023, the Labour Party said that it would reverse the decision if it wins the next general election. Well, we're now only months away from that election, so what if the lifetime allowance does come back? Should you take action now in case it does, or see what transpires before making any decisions? Let's take a look. Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is Pete Matthew and I'm a 26-year veteran chartered financial planner here in the UK. I've helped thousands of families retire well, and I've been making videos like this one for 14 years. So thank you for watching this one, which is brought to you by Meaningful Academy Retirement Planning, of which I'll talk a little bit more about in a little while. So this video is coming out in May 2024, and as of 6th of April 2024, just a few weeks ago, the lifetime allowance has been abolished. For the year prior to that, it still existed, but any tax charge arising as a result of crystallizing pension benefits over the lifetime allowance was set to zero, right? This is because it took time to get legislation passed to fully abolish the lifetime allowance. So this was a kind of a stopgap measure to make sure that people weren't penalized before the legislation came in. But actually, that might have implications for a possible reintroduction. The lifetime allowance set a kind of maximum ceiling of benefits that you could take from a pension, and that figure was £1,073,100 before it was abolished altogether. Any benefits crystallized over that figure, you paid a tax charge, and that was 25% if you left the excess in the pension, or 55% if you took the excess out into your bank account as a lump sum usually. So obviously it's a good thing that the lifetime allowance has gone, but its legacy persists in some new rules that limit the amount of tax-free cash you can take from your pensions. I covered those in the last video, so I'll make sure there's a link to that in the description. Now, it's fair to say that reintroducing the lifetime allowance is not going to be an easy task for an incoming Labour government. It's certainly not going to be a case of cutting and pasting the old legislation. There's going to have to be some serious, careful thought given to the implications of its reintroduction. So assuming that the reintroduced lifetime allowance framework would work much the same as the old scheme, one easy option in principle would be essentially to start with a blank slate. So forget all crystallizations that have gone before and give everyone a new lifetime allowance for any future crystallizations of pension benefit. It's nice and easy, that, but the problem with it is that the new lifetime allowance probably wouldn't raise that much tax revenue for quite a lot of years actually. And that's especially the case if people preempted the legislation by taking steps to crystallize pensions early. I'll look at that in just a minute. So maybe there's some way devised of giving everyone who has crystallized pensions before the reintroduction a kind of score that shows how much of the lifetime allowance they've used up. But here the problem is that until the 5th of April 2024, the figure for the amount of lifetime allowance used when you crystallized is provided to you, the scheme member, by the pension provider. And so that information is easily lost or misinterpreted, and that all just seems like a bit of a shaky foundation on which to base a concrete figure, for scoring people on a new lifetime allowance system. And after the 6th of April 2024, there's no lifetime allowance calculations being done at all. So between that date and some possible reintroduction, where's that data going to come from to work out how much people have used? Now, it's possible, I guess, for some kind of retrospective calculations to be done in some cases, but that's likely to be very complex, and it's going to require some kind of, I think, hashing up to come up with a figure of lifetime allowance used when there was no lifetime allowance in place. Also, what about people who have contributed to pensions heavily, perhaps, since the abolition of the lifetime allowance was announced? That was all done in good faith, but maybe who now find themselves over the reintroduced lifetime allowance as a result. Well, that doesn't seem fair. So there's obviously going to need to be some kind of transitional protection arrangements, just like there was when the lifetime allowance was first introduced back in 2006. Now, I'm old enough to remember that. It was complicated then, and I can only think that it will probably be even more complicated now. And it takes time to introduce complex legislation. Assuming we have an election in the autumn of 2024, and assuming Labour get in, as the opinion polls would suggest they will at the time I'm recording this, It's pretty unlikely, I think, that they would be able to pass this legislation by April 2025. I mean, it's taken a year to pass the legislation to abolish it. So it's difficult to imagine that passing legislation to reintroduce a lifetime allowance is going to be any quicker. But they would likely have to pass some kind of anti-forestalling measures to prevent the Exchequer losing out hugely from people taking action in advance of any planned legislation. Action like what? What might people do to protect themselves if it is announced that the lifetime allowance is going to come back? Well, those with defined benefit pension schemes might retire early to crystallize their pensions before the reintroduction. This is actually one of the reasons given for abolishing the lifetime allowance in the first place. The government particularly wanted to encourage senior NHS doctors to carry on working instead of retiring early to avoid the LTA. But if it is reintroduced, it's going to have the opposite effect. People will retire earlier to avoid a tax charge. Presumably, some special measures for those doctors would need to be put in place, but there'd be plenty of other people affected too. What about them? Those who stopped paying into DC pensions under the old regime might have been encouraged to restart their contributions, and they'd be taking advantage of higher annual allowances, perhaps past unused allowances, to heavily contribute to their pensions. Well, if they do that, and then they crystallize those benefits before the reintroduction of the lifetime allowance, the Exchequer will have lost out significantly. And both those approaches would be completely understandable. Why would you voluntarily pay a tax charge if by crystallizing your pensions before the reintroduction of the lifetime allowance, you can avoid it? So, should you consider these options to avoid the lifetime allowance? Should you take action now? Well, before I look at what you should do, let me ask two things of you. Firstly, if this is useful so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Second, check out Meaningful Academy Retirement Planning, which is my online course to help you plan and execute the perfect retirement. There's tons of video lessons, worksheets, calculators, a monthly live Q&A call with me, and access to the best financial planning software in the world. It's the app that I use every day with clients. It's called Voyant Go, and you're going to love it. So check it all out at meaningfulacademy.com/retirement planning. And if you decide that it's for you, use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. So what should you do, if anything? Well, right now, I really don't think you should make any quick decisions. I always say that we can only plan effectively within parameters that we know, not what we think might happen. As the election approaches, I think if they've got any sense, the Labour Party are going to need to make their thinking quite clear in order to forestall action by pension scheme members, which might undermine any tax take from a future reintroduction of the lifetime allowance. So let's watch carefully for that information. As and when it comes out, I'll be sure to do a video to keep us all up to date. But if, for whatever reason, that information isn't forthcoming, there will inevitably be a delay between them being elected and being able to pass anti-forestalling measures. And that should give you a window to act if you feel like you must. I would still not be hasty though, as there will have to be some transitional protections put in place. There is just no way they're going to be able to apply retrospective taxation without a legal challenge. So if you're contributing to a pension now, keep doing so. The tax benefits in the here and now are too valuable to pass up, even if there does end up being some taxation on the far end. And don't retire just for tax reasons. Retire because you want to and you're able to. Never let the tax tail wag the investment or pension dog. Look, I hope this was helpful, folks. There's a lot up in the air still, but I'll be watching closely and I'll do my best to keep you informed as news comes out. Now, I will inevitably get comments under this video saying that this won't affect 80% of people. That's actually not true. It won't affect more like about 99% of the working population. But many of that 1% that it does affect are watching my videos, so this is for you. And there are plenty of other videos for the rest of the country, including this one, which would be a really good one to watch if you want to understand how pensions really work. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.